Welcome to mysterious and scary stories told with all our heart. Each of your likes, shares, and subscriptions not only helps the channel grow but is also the greatest source of motivation for us to continue to bring better stories. If you love this content, please like, share with your friends, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any stories. Thank you very much. And turn off the lights, put on your headphones and get ready to face your fears. Abandoned house. The entrance to the house was a long and dark hallway, where only the light from the flashlight I held in my hand illuminated the cracked walls. With every step I took, I could feel the cold atmosphere, unlike houses that had been abandoned for a long time. The furniture in the house is also old, covered with dirt and cobwebs. In the living room, the torn sofa, chairs, and cabinets' missing doors were left behind as if their owners had left in a hurry and never came back. I walked through the living room and walked to the stairs leading to the second floor. Every step under my feet made a cracking sound, as if the house was breathing and resisting my intrusion. Entering a narrow hallway, I found a ladder down to the attic. A rusty chain hangs from the ceiling. I pulled it down with a sharp hiss, like a warning. The sound of hard metal echoed in the quiet space. As I entered the attic, I shined my flashlight on the large wooden slats across the roof. The items scattered on the floor made me feel like someone had lived here recently, but there was no sign of their presence. A few old coats, a few broken lamps, and a strange cold feeling spread everywhere. The atmosphere here was even colder than downstairs, as if the air in the attic had been trapped for a long time, unable to escape. My palms were wet, my breathing was heavy. I can't escape the feeling that someone is watching me from behind. I turned around but didn't see anything. I bent down to examine the stains on the roof, hoping to find a reasonable clue. But when I stood up, I accidentally kicked something soft, like a jacket. I turned on the flashlight and saw a pair of dried mud shoes left behind. Each shoe had mud stains on it, as if someone had hastily left them behind without bothering to clean them up. I couldn't understand why there were personal items left behind like this in this house. It was as if there had been a sudden and inexplicable appearance, as if the owner of the house had left in a hurry without taking important items with him. I can't help but think I did something wrong by invading this space. As I tried to leave the attic, my flashlight suddenly jumped over the wooden slats, illuminating the dark space. I walked quickly towards the ladder, but when I turned back, I clearly felt a cold wave pressing against my shoulder. I was startled, a creepy feeling rising in my body. My breathing became rapid, every step on the stairs seemed to be chasing me. I couldn't escape the feeling like someone was standing behind me, watching my every move. Hurrying downstairs, I rushed to the front door, my hands shaking as I fumbled with the doorknob. The door opened, and I stepped into the fresh outdoors. However, I couldn't ignore the things I left in the attic, the tools and the notepad. I felt a strange urge to go back and get them, but reason told me not to. Those items were just normal items, but the discomfort in my heart made me unable to ignore that strange feeling. When I got home, I tried to dispel the feeling of insecurity in my heart. But as soon as I entered, I noticed something strange. The air in this house was unusual, colder than usual, even though it was summer outside. I tried to continue my work, but my mind returned to the eerie sounds I'd heard in the attic. Every time I stand near the window, I feel like I'm being watched. Every step in the house had a slight noise, as if someone was moving around me. One night, I decided to test whether the strange sounds were just my imagination. I turned on the flashlight and went out into the hallway, but then I heard a small clicking sound from the wall. I stood still, feeling like someone was standing behind me, even though I couldn't see them. When I turned around, there was no one, but the air was still heavy as if an invisible presence was watching me. On the following nights, I couldn't sleep peacefully. The sound of plumbing, the whistling of fans, and light footsteps made it impossible for me to relax. I knew that there was something unusual about this house. One day, I tried something bizarre. I brought a chair into the living room and sat facing the ceiling fan, hoping it would turn on by itself. But nothing happened. The strange feeling started to overwhelm me again. I walked closer to the fan and pulled the cord. At this time, the fan started to rotate, but it was not controlled by me. My breathing became rapid. I looked into the reflection, and it was just me, but there was a strange feeling like someone was standing behind me. Every night, the feeling of discomfort becomes more evident. The house's foul smell, eerie silence, and inexplicable noises made me feel that I was not alone in this house. One morning, I decided to call an electrician to check the electrical system. When he arrived, he just said that it was the normal noise of an old house, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something invisible existed in this house. No matter how hard I tried to analyze it rationally, there was still something I couldn't explain. The muddy shoes, strange noises, and the strange feeling of someone standing behind me, all of it made me uneasy. The more I tried to explain, the more I felt like I was sinking into a never-ending nightmare. The next day, I decided to start my work again, trying not to pay attention to the strange things happening around this house. But every time I returned to the living room, I felt an invisible presence, as if someone was standing there, watching me from a dark corner. In the evening, as I was checking the items in the report, a strange noise made me stop. A creaking sound came from the stairs. I looked around, but saw nothing but darkness. It felt like someone had just passed the stairs, but I couldn't see them. I tried to reassure myself that it was just a normal noise from the old house, but my heart kept pounding. In the evening, as I was sitting in my bedroom, I heard soft breathing. At first, I thought I was dreaming, but when I opened my eyes, I realized I wasn't. The sound of breathing is still there, clear and very close. I was startled, gasping for air, and suddenly felt a cold wave envelop me. I turned around to look, but the room was still empty. My heart pounded as I realized that I couldn't explain this feeling. Not a nightmare, but a real presence, invisible but distinct. Day after day, I felt like I was slowly losing control. Strange noises kept bothering me, and every time I went into the bedroom, I felt something heavy on my chest. I've started hearing footsteps at night, strange sounds coming from the walls, like someone is moving in this space, but when I open the door, there's nothing. One time, I decided to check the locks in my house, telling myself that these were just my excessive worries. But when I checked the bedroom window, I discovered something strange. The window was open. Although I distinctly remember locking them before going to bed. A strange feeling filled me, as if someone had sneaked into the room when I wasn't paying attention. I stepped back, decided to close the door and check again. But as soon as I turned away, I heard the window open again, softly, as if someone was playing with me. I cannot explain this. I've lived in old houses, but I've never felt this strange. It felt like something was watching me, moving around me, making me unable to rest for even a moment. One night, I decided I wouldn't sleep. The feeling of insecurity makes it impossible for me to relax. I sat in the living room, the dim light illuminating the mossy walls of the house. The creaking sounds coming from the wall increased the feeling of tension. I decided to sit still, observing every detail in the house. It felt like someone was moving around me, even though I couldn't see them. Something fuzzy, intangible, yet truly present. Suddenly, I heard a noise from the window. Gently, as if someone was prying them open. I got up, went to the window and checked, but there was nothing. However, the strange feeling remained, as if I was being watched. I wondered if I was imagining things, but this feeling was too real for me to ignore. The other night, I decided to check all the windows and doors in the house to make sure everything was locked tight. As I was standing near the bedroom door, I suddenly heard light breathing from behind me. My heart skipped a beat, and I turned around immediately. But there was no one there. I felt like someone was standing behind me, so close that I could feel their breath. But when I returned, the room was still empty. Once again, the feeling of fear came. I cannot explain this. Everything in the house seems normal, but why do I feel like I'm being watched? Every night, as I prepare to go to sleep, I feel something watching me from the dark. Whether I turn on the light or not, that strange feeling never leaves me. One night, I sat on the couch in the living room, trying to concentrate on reading, but the sounds kept coming from all over the house. Soft noises like someone walking through the rooms, whispers in the air, all made it impossible for me to relax. At midnight, I heard footsteps very close, but when I turned on the light, no one was there. This strange feeling never stops, every night it gets worse. The more I tried to get rid of it, the more I felt like I was being pulled into a never-ending nightmare. One day, while I was at work, I received a call from an old friend. He asked me about the house I was living in and if any strange things happened. I don't know why he asked that, but I couldn't help but feel a creepy feeling when I heard that question. I recounted some of the strange things that had happened in the house, and he immediately offered to help. He said he had heard mysterious stories related to this house, and I began to feel confused. The next day, he visited the house. When he walked in, I felt a change in the air. He walked around the house, checked each room and gave very serious advice. He said that this house had a dark history, and that I might be haunted by spirits that had not passed away. I didn't know whether to believe what he said or not, but I couldn't ignore the feeling of fear that was taking over my mind. Even though I tried to clean everything and check every detail in the house, the strange feeling did not go away. Every day I feel more and more like I'm living in a nightmare I can't escape from. Strange noises, the feeling of someone standing behind, and increasingly clear supernatural signs made it impossible for me to rest in peace. This house has become a part of my life, an inescapable part, whether I want it or not. This story is still ongoing. Fear, strange sounds, and invisible presences are still an unexplained part of this house. You will never know if this house is really haunted or not, but one thing is for sure, it has become a part of my life. Late one afternoon, I decided to go back to the house again, hoping to sort out the strange things that had happened over the past few days. This inexplicable feeling has stuck with me, but I still can't shake it. When I entered, I immediately noticed a strange change in the space. The atmosphere in the house today is completely different. It wasn't as cold as usual, but there was a stuffiness, as if the air in the house was trapped and couldn't escape. I entered the living room, where everything seemed to remain the same. But when I approached the sofa, I noticed something strange. The seat was askew, and under the foot of the chair, I discovered a thin piece of paper. This piece of paper is not an old newspaper or a stray piece of paper. It was a note, with the words hastily and carelessly written, "Don't come back. They're waiting." I can't explain why the paper appeared here, but when I read it, a cold feeling ran down my spine. I hid the paper in my pocket, not wanting anyone to know about it, but the strange feeling still did not leave me. It wasn't an unintentional reminder. I felt like someone had written a warning to me, like they knew I would come back, and they were watching me. The feeling of being watched constantly increases. Every step in this house brings suspense. One night, as I was standing near the living room window, I heard a soft sound, as if someone was walking gently on the wooden floor. My heart was pounding in my chest. I turned around quickly, but there was no one there. Everything remained quiet. However, when I turned around and looked towards the window, I saw a dark shadow reflected in the glass. It was a figure standing in the corner of the room, a faceless figure. It stood silently, not moving, but its presence made it impossible for me to breathe. My heart stopped, and a wave of fear surged through me. But when I turned around and looked in that direction, there was nothing. The living room was still empty, but I knew I couldn't imagine that. I saw that image, and it still haunts me. The feeling of insecurity cannot be dispelled. Every night, when I lie in bed, I feel my breathing become heavy, as if someone is standing next to the bed. I can't see them, but I can feel their presence. That steady breathing sound kept echoing, as if someone was standing very close to me, staring at me in the dark. Even though I couldn't see them, I knew they were there. And every time I open my eyes, I see nothing but darkness. One night, while I was falling asleep, I suddenly woke up feeling an invisible force pressing on my chest. My throat was tight, and I couldn't breathe. My eyes were wide open, but everything in the room was blurry and unclear. I tried to breathe, but it felt like something was squeezing my body, making me unable to move. This feeling lasted only a few seconds, but in those moments, I felt like I was trapped in a nightmare that I couldn't escape from. When I pulled out a little air, that feeling also disappeared. I still lay still on the bed, cold sweat breaking out on my forehead. But I know one thing for sure, I am no longer alone in this house. One day, I decided to learn more about this house. I went to the local library to look up information about the house's history. After some searching, I found an old article about this house, written many years ago. The article tells about a family who used to live here, but they left suddenly, leaving no trace. No one knows where they went, but it is rumored that there is something strange in this house. Supernatural phenomena, unexplained feelings, it's all mentioned in this article. I began to realize that this house had a dark history, and I was drawn into a story that I couldn't escape. Could it be that all I'm experiencing is just a repeat of the strange events that previous people have experienced? And if so, can I get out of this house without paying the price? The feeling of tension and fear increases. I can't bear it anymore. This house, although seemingly quiet in the daylight, brings nightmares in the dark. At one point, I decided I had to leave, even though I knew it wouldn't be easy. I packed my things, preparing for a trip that I hoped would free me from this obsession. But while I was cleaning, I heard a noise coming from the stairs. A gentle footstep sounded in the quiet space. I turned around to look, but didn't see anything. That strange feeling filled me again. I couldn't escape the invisible presence that was following me. When I left the house, the feeling of tension still did not let me go. I knew that I could not completely escape the haunting of the house. Strange sounds, shadowy figures, and inexplicable feelings continued in my mind. My house has become a part of me, and even though I am gone, I cannot deny that I have lived in a world that I cannot fully understand. After leaving the house, I still felt its presence clinging to me. Every night, when I entered my new home, I couldn't shake the cold feeling, as if my old house was still following me. It's been a few days, but it feels like someone is standing behind me and not letting me go. One night, as I was sitting on the couch in the living room, I felt a cold wind blowing, even though there were no windows open. At that time, I realized that the atmosphere in this house was also strange. Every time I walk in, it feels gloomy and heavy. The following nights, I began to feel that invisible presence more clearly. I heard light footsteps and whispering sounds in the empty room. Even though there was no one there, I couldn't ignore the feeling that something was watching me. I always checked the corners of the room, shining a flashlight into every nook and cranny, but there was only darkness reflected back from the mirror. Every night I sleep in fear, filled with anxiety, unable to understand what is happening. And then, one night, when I woke up in the middle of the night, I heard a whisper, as if someone was calling my name. That call was very gentle, but enough to wake me up. I sat up startled, my heart was beating fast and my hands were shaking. I don't know whose voice it was, but I was sure it wasn't a dream. Day by day, my insecurity grew stronger. I began to see strange silhouettes in the paintings hanging on the walls and in the mirrors. They are not images of me, but dark shadows, blurry, indistinct but present. Sometimes I feel them moving, other times they stand still and stare at me. I know I can't keep living in this fear forever. I need to face something. One day, I decided to return to my old house, looking for answers. This time, I came during the day, trying to convince myself that it was all my imagination. But when I walked through the door, a cold feeling enveloped me. The atmosphere in the house remained the same, stuffy and full of heaviness. Everything seems to have not changed, except one thing: there is an old armchair placed in the corner of the living room. It's not an item I remember. The strange feeling arose in me again. I started walking around the house, checking each room, but I found nothing but old traces of the house. When I went up to the attic, I realized that the air here was thicker than ever. I felt an invisible presence again, and as soon as I turned my back, I heard a noise from behind. Turning around, I saw a dark shadow pass by quickly, as if someone had just moved right in the corner of my eye. My heart pounded, my body stiffened. I can't explain it, but that feeling can't be wrong. It's real. Returning home, I began to feel more clearly about strange things. Every time I look into the mirror or the paintings in the room, I see the silhouettes of unclear people, as if they are hiding in those paintings. One day, while examining an old painting in the living room, I suddenly noticed a strange detail. In the painting, a shadowy figure stands quietly, but it is not the person in the painting but a shadow looking at me. I couldn't believe my eyes, but when I looked closely, the figure became clearer. It was an inexplicable image. I walked closer to the painting, and when I touched it, I felt a cold rush over me. My hands shook as I backed away. Everything in the room suddenly changed. The air became heavy, and a strong feeling of fear invaded my mind. I know I can't stay here much longer. It felt like someone was standing right behind me, watching my every move. Deciding to return to my old house, I felt I couldn't hide forever. I needed an answer, even if it meant facing my deepest fears. This time, I brought a camcorder and a camera, hoping to capture any supernatural signs. When I entered the house, everything was still the same, but I felt a change. A great change in the air. I went up to the attic, where I felt something dark was lurking. When I walked in, my flashlight suddenly flashed and then went off. I stood still in the dark, my heart pounding as if I was hearing someone's breathing, clear and close. Suddenly, I felt a cold hand placed on my shoulder. I turned around quickly, but no one was there. This strange feeling was inexplicable, and at that moment, I decided to stop. I returned home, but part of me knew that I would never escape this obsession. Invisible ghosts, blurred images in mirrors, and inexplicable noises will forever be a part of me. I don't know what is happening to me. Every night, I hear whispers in the house, strange sounds that cannot be explained. Those were noises that no one could hear except me. The shadows in the mirror, the strange images in the paintings, all pointed to one thing: I couldn't escape this house. Could I have become a part of it? Am I haunted by the souls that once lived there? Or is it just that my imagination has begun to play with my mind? One thing is certain, this house has left an indelible mark on my mind. And even if I leave, I will always carry that feeling, the obsession of a home that I cannot explain. As I continued to check the circuit breaker panel and the increasingly strange noises in the basement, my body began to feel more stressed than ever. Every step I took, I felt strange shadows on the wall, rapid movements that could not be clearly seen. The light from the weak flashlight was not enough to dispel the fear rising inside me. I continued walking along the shelves of old items, seeing metal crates and abandoned items, all covered in a thick layer of dust. The air in the basement became more and more stuffy, making me feel like I was trapped in a space that I couldn't escape from. My flashlight still glows, but its stabilization only lasts for a few seconds. Every time the lights flash, I feel like there is an invisible presence in this space. Small sounds, like strange footsteps and light scratches on the concrete floor, made me feel even more like I wasn't alone. Something was moving around me, watching my every move, even though I couldn't see it. Suddenly, as I continued to shine my flashlight at the metal shelves and bins, I saw a small shadow moving across the wall, as fast as a breeze. It wasn't a reflection of me, it was a clear shadow, shaped like a person, but not human. My legs stiffened, my heart pounded in my ears, and I could do nothing but stand there, eyes glued to the darkness. That shadow only appeared for a moment, but it was enough to make me feel like I was no longer safe. The feeling of being watched rose strongly. I began to feel like an invisible force was pushing me backwards, as if someone wanted me to get out of this basement. Every step I take makes me feel more stressed. My flashlight flashed then went off again. I tried to turn it back on but it kept flashing in the dark. It feels like I'm in a nightmare, unable to wake up. As I looked toward the metal cabinets, I saw another shadow, larger this time, moving quickly from side to side. I stood frozen, unable to do anything but stare into the darkness. The sound of light footsteps on the concrete floor seemed to echo in my head, making me unable to think of anything other than running away. I turned around and ran towards the stairs, feeling like something was chasing me. I rushed up the stairs, the weak light from the flashlight only helping me see part of the stairs. The feeling of suffocation took over, and I couldn't stop. My heart was pounding so hard I could barely breathe. Everything around me was dark and quiet, except for the gentle sound of footsteps, increasing my sense of fear. When I escaped the basement and returned to the hallway, the feeling of fear still did not let me go. I looked into the dark room ahead, where the only light was from the lamp in my hand. I tried to stop and take a deep breath to calm down, but the tension in my body couldn't be erased. I wonder if someone is watching me from the shadows, from behind the walls of this apartment. It felt like an invisible force was pulling me towards the next room, where voices still rang out, vague and inaudible. I knew they weren't my imagination, but I couldn't figure out what they meant. Every time I stood near the wall, the voice would stop, but when I stepped back, it continued. I decided to go to the apartment next door again. This time, I didn't just knock, I called out, trying to hope that someone would answer. But no one answered. I didn't hear any sound other than my breathing. I banged on the door harder, filled with anxiety. No response. I returned to my apartment, tired and scared. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every little noise startled me. The feeling of being watched seemed to grow stronger and stronger. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching me, waiting for me in the dark. One day, I met the landlord again and told him about the strange voices and the bad smell I felt in the apartment. He looked at me uncomfortably, saying that this old house might have strange sounds, but it was nothing to worry about. He insisted that I was just nervous because I wasn't used to the place. But I can't ignore this feeling. I can't ignore the strange signs I feel are happening in this house. The feeling of fear has become an indispensable part of my life. At some point, I realized that I couldn't escape it. This feeling, this inexplicable feeling, will stay with me for the rest of my life. Several weeks passed, but the feeling of being haunted still did not let me go. The whispers and shadowy figures in the dark night still exist every time I try to relax. I can't escape, I can't live a normal life anymore. Every night, I waiting for the strange voice to come from behind the wall, and every time it comes, I ask myself, can I live with it this time, or will I have to face the truth that I cannot accept? One night, as I was sitting in my living room, trying to relax and not think about the eerie sounds around me, I noticed something strange. Even though I checked every window and door before entering the house, I found a small door in the apartment was open. It was a door leading to a small room that I don't remember ever opening. I stood up, my heart pounding, and walked toward the door. When I looked through the gap, I saw a shadowy shadow standing in the room. At first I thought it was a reflection, but when I looked closer, I realized it was an unclear shape, a silhouette. My heart beat faster, my body stiffened. I can't move. That shadow stood silently, not moving, as if waiting for me to look at it. I didn't dare open the door, I just stood there, looking into the darkness inside the room. When I turned back to look towards the living room, it felt like someone was standing behind me. I turned around, but there was no one. However, when I looked into the nearby mirror, I saw a figure standing behind me in the reflection. I quickly turned around, but I was alone in the room. A feeling of panic rose, I didn't know what to do. Am I crazy? The next morning, I decided to look for answers. I began examining every corner of this house, looking for any traces that could explain the strange occurrences. When I opened the door to the storage room, I discovered an old box placed in the corner of the room, underneath old items. This box is unlike anything else in the house. When I opened it, inside there was an old photo, faded and yellowed, of a family standing in front of this house. There's something wrong about the photo. This family looked strangely familiar, as if I had seen them somewhere. They stood with bright smiles, but their eyes looked as if they were looking at me through the photo. I can't explain that feeling. A coldness enveloped me when I looked at the photo, as if there was some connection between me and them. Everything in this house seems to have a dark history that I haven't been able to fully uncover. The feeling of insecurity does not stop. One night, while I was sitting in the living room, I heard a loud noise coming from the wall. It was a loud thumping sound, as if someone was trying to escape. My heart was pounding as I approached the wall where the noise was coming from. My lamp shined into the crack in the wall, and I saw a small crack, where I could feel a draft of cold air escaping. I pulled out a tool to open the crack, and when I flipped the board over, I discovered a secret passage. A door led underground, a place I had never seen before. I stood there, not knowing whether to continue or not. Part of me wanted to explore, but another part wanted to escape from this space where everything was strange and inexplicable. I decided to go down. It felt like an invisible force was pulling me into the darkness. The deeper I descended, the thicker the air became, and I heard the whisper of voices, as if from long ago. The voices weren't clear, but I knew they were trying to say something to me. I continued going down, and eventually, I came to a small room where there was an old wooden table with a large mirror. When I looked into the mirror, I saw myself reflected in it, but something was different. The image in the mirror doesn't look like me. I saw a man standing behind me, with cold and dangerous eyes. When I turned around, no one was there, but when I looked in the mirror again, the man was still standing there, looking at me menacingly. I cannot explain this. I feel like I'm trapped in a nightmare I can't wake up from. I don't know if those voices are the spirits of the people who have lived in this house, or if I am the next in this strange series of events. But one thing I know for sure, I cannot escape this obsession. It was ingrained in my mind, and every night, I waited for that shadow to appear again, right in that mirror. One night, when I couldn't take it anymore, I decided to leave. But when I stood in front of the door and was about to go out, I felt a strong force pulling me back, as if someone was holding me. I turned around, but there was no one. There was only a dark shadow in the mirror, and I knew that I couldn't leave here. Even if I try to leave, I'm still trapped in this house, in an invisible obsession that I can't escape. And when I thought I was through the last door, I realized that it would always lead me back to this place. Every night, I still sit in this apartment, look in the mirror and wait. The obsession still does not let me go. The voices, the shadows, and the feeling of being watched continue to follow me. I cannot escape it, and perhaps I will forever live in this obsession. My story is not over yet, and perhaps, I will never know the truth behind these strange things. Even though I ran away from the basement, the feeling of tension did not leave me. Every step on the stairs, every gentle sound of objects moving in the dark rushed back into my mind. As I drove home, I couldn't stop checking the rearview mirror, half expecting to see that dark figure sitting in the back seat. But nothing. Just shadows and light passing by. I still can't explain what's going on. The next time I go to work, I try not to think about those strange events. I told myself it was just paranoia, caused by the building's old electrical system. But I knew deep down, something wasn't right. Every time I went back to the basement, I felt like something was watching me, something inexplicable. One afternoon, I returned to work to check the electrical system again, as I promised. I don't want to let the feeling of fear overwhelm me. But when I reached the basement, the atmosphere changed immediately. The air in the basement became thick and stuffy, and I felt like everything around me was bothering me, forcing me to leave. I walked down the stairs, my hands sweaty, my shoes rubbing on the concrete. As I approached the electrical panel, I noticed that the lights on the ceiling began to flicker again. A cold chill ran down my spine. I quickly flipped the switch and tried to stabilize the electrical system, but when the light turned on, I felt an invisible presence right behind me. I couldn't see anyone, but I clearly felt that someone was standing behind me. A shadow moved quickly behind me, like a gust of wind. I turned around, but there was nothing. My heart pounded loudly in my chest, my throat went dry. I don't know if I'm imagining it or not, but this feeling is so clear. The gentle footsteps and rustling sounds in the space made me feel uneasy. I quickly turned around and ran up the stairs, but as I ran, I felt a force pulling me back, as if the shadow was chasing me. I rushed up the stairs, each step echoing in the silence, until I reached my office and locked the door. The vague feeling of safety felt like a last glimmer of light, but I knew I couldn't escape this feeling. Every night, I have strange dreams. In the dream, I returned to the basement, where I always felt the presence of something invisible. That shadow never leaves me alone. It kept following me, quietly loitering in the dark, waiting for me to return. And every time I wake up, that feeling is still there, like a shadow hanging over my mind. One time, I decided to go back again, not to check the electrical system, but to face that shadow, the feeling of being watched. When I opened the basement door, I realized that the atmosphere here was different. It felt heavier, like something was pressing down on me. I went down the stairs, this time not with confidence, but with an inexplicable fear. And when I looked into the darkness, I saw something moving in it. A black shadow stood right in front of me. It was not my reflection. I couldn't take my eyes off it, couldn't move. I want to run, but I can't. That shadow seemed to be pulling me into another space, a space with no way out. The feeling of fear became extreme when the shadow suddenly disappeared, giving way to a cold feeling that enveloped the room. I stood motionless, not knowing what to do. A cold wind blew through, carrying old papers in the room, making the atmosphere even more stuffy. I knew I couldn't leave. Can't get out. Suddenly, I heard whispers, voices that seemed to come from within the wall, as if they were trying to tell me something. I approached the wall, and in that moment, I felt a gentle movement, as if something was pushing me closer. I cautiously listened to the voices and realized that they were not normal voices. Every word staccato, every tone filled with menace. I can't continue anymore. The feeling that I was trapped in an invisible space, a world I couldn't understand, made me more scared than ever. Every night, I hear whispers and light footsteps in the dark. There was no one there, but I knew something was watching me. This feeling cannot be extinguished. It has become a part of my life. Long sleepless nights, invisible shadows, and the feeling of being watched that never left me. Finally, I realized one thing: I couldn't hide forever. This obsession will not let me go until I face it, even if it costs me everything. Every night, I wait for that whisper to come from behind the wall, from the darkness. And I know that no matter what I do, it will never stop. That shadow, that feeling of being watched, was always there, right next to me, waiting for me to once again step into the darkness. And when I look in the mirror every morning, I don't see myself. I just saw that shadow, standing behind me, waiting for me. I no longer dare to face what happened in the basement, but that feeling cannot be extinguished. Every night, I waited, and that shadow came, closer and closer, as if chasing me. I couldn't understand this, but I knew I couldn't run forever. This feeling of insecurity comes not only from the shadows in the old house but also from inexplicable voices. One day, in a dream, I returned to the house, but this time something was different. In my dream, I saw a closed door that I had never seen before. This door was not in the design of the house, but when I opened it, I was no longer in my apartment. I found myself standing in a dark, cold, musty-smelling space, and surrounded by old cabinets. Strange shadows were standing silently. I turned to look, and just as I closed my eyes in the dream, I felt a cold hand touch my shoulder. My heart was pounding, I couldn't breathe. I woke up startled, in a cold sweat, but a strange feeling still lingered in me. It was like someone had just touched me. The next day, I met my colleague again, to whom I told about the strange incident in the basement. He didn't seem surprised, and just said something I couldn't stop thinking about: maybe you're not the first person to see them. I don't understand what he means. But in his eyes, I realized something had changed. There is a truth that I have never heard of before. He went on to say that many people had worked in the building in the past, and not everyone remained. Some people have strangely disappeared, but no one can explain why. I began to feel a connection between the strange events in the house and the things that had happened to those before me. That evening, I returned to my apartment, my mind full of questions. I tried not to think about the voices in the walls and the shadows watching me. But when I approached the bathroom mirror, I saw the shadow of a man standing behind me, not my reflection. I turned around immediately, but there was no one there. I can't understand this anymore. It felt like an invisible force pushed me into a dark corner, making it impossible for me to escape. That night, when I decided to revisit the archive room, I saw an old photo taped to the wall. It was a very old black and white photo of a family standing in front of this house. But when I looked closely, I noticed something strange. In the photo, all the family members had blank eyes, as if they were not human. I started to learn about this family, and I discovered that they had lived here for a long time before the house was abandoned. Several documents indicate that they mysteriously disappeared. No trace, no explanation. But in the old papers, there is a name that I cannot forget: Henry Blackwell. That is the name of the previous owner of the house. Even though the feeling of fear exhausted me, I decided to find more information about the Blackwell family. All I found were short paragraphs about them in old records. This name makes me feel like there's something strange behind it. I went to a nearby library to find more about their history, but all I found was an old newspaper article, mentioning how the family disappeared without explanation. The article states that after the Blackwell family went missing, there was a curse spread about this house. People living nearby have reported hearing strange footsteps and whispering voices from within the walls. But no one dared to enter the house anymore. They only know that it is abandoned, and anyone who has ever been here has never returned. At this point, I realized that I was caught up in a story that I couldn't fully understand. Shadows, voices, and the feeling of being watched are not random events. This is an unexplained series of events, possibly related to souls from the past that have not yet passed on. The decision cannot be stopped. I returned to the house, this time determined not to let it go. I prepared myself to face the shadow, the voices, and the inexplicable things. When I entered the basement, the lights flashed on and then went out immediately, as if someone was playing with me. I went down, my hands were cold, but I didn't stop. I walked past metal cabinets, old shelves, and then I saw it, a secret door behind a bookshelf. It was unlike any door I had ever seen before. When I opened the door, I saw a small room, completely different from the rooms in this house. In front of me is a wooden table, on which is an old photo of the Blackwell family. When I looked at the photo, a cold feeling came over me. That family's empty eyes stared at me. And then, a cold wind swept over me, making me unable to stand. I turned around, and as soon as I did, I saw a shadow moving quickly across the room. My heart was pounding. And then, I heard heavy breathing, like someone was standing right behind me, but when I turned around, there was no one. Finally, I understood that I couldn't run away. These shadows, these souls, are not something I can explain or escape. They were here before me, and I will forever be trapped in this vortex, where the darkness never leaves. I stood in the dark room where the secret door had just opened. The Blackwell family photo was still there, but this time, I couldn't just look at it as a harmless object. Their eyes, empty eyes, now seemed to be looking through me, aiming straight at my soul, making me unable to move. When I entered the room, the cold air suddenly became thicker and suffocating. A cold feeling seemed to engulf my body, and I couldn't stop as I approached the wooden table. On the table there was an old book, the cover was peeling, and the pages inside were yellow. I slowly opened the book, not knowing what I was looking for, but a strange attraction made me unable to stop. This book is not an ordinary book. The pages contained strange characters and strange drawings that I had never seen before. Those drawings looked like ancient magic symbols. It looked like they were drawn in blood, but in the dark, I couldn't make out exactly. Suddenly, an image appeared in my mind, the image of an ancient ritual, where a family was transported into another world, a world where their souls could never escape. I quickly flipped through the pages, and then I stopped at a handwritten paragraph. This passage tells about a curse that has haunted the Blackwell family, that they have been captured in this house by an invisible force, and they will forever exist in darkness, unable to escape. A final message was written in blood, saying, "We cannot escape this darkness. And you will be next." A feeling of fear filled my body. I quickly closed the book and turned back. The darkness in the room seemed to be approaching me, and I felt a cold hand touching my shoulder. When I turned around, I found myself standing in front of a large mirror, not a normal mirror. It reflected me, but when I looked closely, I realized that in the mirror, there was a person standing behind me. That's not me, it's not my reflection. It was a man, with messy black hair and empty eyes, staring at me. I couldn't breathe, my throat was tight, and a cold feeling ran down my spine. I tried to turn back, but no one was there. The black shadow in the mirror didn't move, it just stood there, looking at me. And I understand that it's not just the Blackwell family trapped in this house, but something even bigger, a ghostly force that has occupied this house for a long time. And I'm slowly becoming a part of that story, a part of this curse. The presence of the shadow in the mirror made me unable to stop thinking about the strange things happening in this house. After returning to that room, I felt like I was slowly being drawn into a soul hunt that I couldn't escape. Every time I entered the house, those feelings became clearer. The painting's eyes looked at me as if they were haunting me from the other side. The feeling of being watched increased, and I couldn't explain it. I can't live in a house like that anymore. But every time I decided to leave, an invisible force pulled me back, making it impossible for me to leave this place. Those voices, those shadows, all seemed to be chasing me, not giving me peace. One night, I decided to do something bold. I would call out that shadow, face it. I stood in front of the mirror, looked into the empty eyes of my reflection, and I whispered, "Who's watching me? Get out." I waited, the silence almost thick. But just when I thought nothing happened, a noise came from behind me. I turned around, and then, a cold hand touched my shoulder. This time, I can't run away anymore. When I turned around, I found myself facing a large door, a door I had never seen before in this house. It was like a door into another world, a space that I couldn't understand. I pushed the door open, and a cold wind rushed in, carrying with it distant whispers from trapped souls. Entering the door is entering another world. I found myself standing in a dark room, where dim lights emanated from old wooden panels. On the wall, there are strange drawings, ghostly images that I have never seen before. My feeling right now is indescribable, as if I'm standing in a place that doesn't belong to me, a place I can't return to. But as I stepped inside, a voice rang out in my head, "Finally, you've arrived. You can't escape us." I can't escape this feeling. The spirits, the shadows, and the feeling of being watched never stops. Part of me wanted to leave, but another part wanted to continue, to find the ultimate truth. When I entered that room, I realized I couldn't go back. This house, the souls in it, have been waiting for me for a long time. I understand that I'm not the first person to get stuck. And I won't be the last. When I left the last house, I was no longer myself. I couldn't escape the voices in my head, the shadowy figures in the mirror, and the feeling of being watched. I don't know if I will survive this haunting, but I know one thing for sure, that shadow will always be with me, never leaving. Every night, I hear those voices, echoing from the darkness. And I understand that, no matter what I do, I will forever be a part of that house. After long days without sleep, I began to realize that this house had invaded every corner of my mind. Dreams are no longer ordinary dreams. I dreamed that I was back in the house, but this time, the house was no longer the same as I remembered. The walls seemed to be shrinking, the hallways were longer, the shadows were deeper, and a whispering voice kept ringing in my ears. Every time I wake up, the sweat is cold, and I feel like I'm living in an eternal dream, unable to wake up. The voice continued to speak to me, telling me to turn around, telling me to look for something in the house that I couldn't explain. One night, I dreamed that I was standing in the living room, where dark shadows moved in the dim light. I heard a slight noise from behind and turned around. I saw a door open. But that's no ordinary door. It is a door to another world, where there is no space, no time. And once I walked through that door, I couldn't go back. When I woke up, I felt like I had just experienced something that cannot be described in words. My mind felt like it was being pulled into an invisible space, where there were no rules or limits. I can't distinguish between reality and a dream anymore. I decided to visit the storage room again, where I found the strange book. When I opened the door, I noticed a small but obvious change. In the room, there was not only a book, but also an old armchair, placed right in the middle of the room, as if inviting me to sit down. I couldn't resist my curiosity, I sat down on that chair. Immediately, I felt a movement in the space around me. It felt like I was no longer in this house, but in another place, where souls who couldn't escape were watching me. In that moment, I heard voices clearer than ever. This time, they are no longer as vague as before. I can hear every word and every sentence clearly, even though I don't understand everything. But one thing I realized was, those voices were calling my name. I heard the name, Henry, and then, Elizabeth, rang out in the air. I turned around, and from the darkness, I saw the silhouette of a woman, dressed in white, with long hair, standing at the door of the room. Her eyes were empty, but I could feel the pain, the desperation in them. She didn't say anything, but her eyes seemed to convey a message that I couldn't understand. That figure approached me, each step light but threatening. My heart was pounding, I couldn't move. I wanted to stand up, but my body wouldn't listen to my commands. As that figure approached, I realized that I couldn't escape it. And when she touched my hand, I felt a coldness penetrate my body, as if her soul was sucking the life out of me. That cold feeling seemed to last forever. But when I looked into her eyes, I saw an image appear in my mind. An image of an ancient house, like this one, but different. A happy family is living in it. And then, dark shadows appeared from the darkness, approaching that family, quietly taking them into another world, where they would be trapped forever. The soul of Elizabeth, the woman in the old painting, was brought into this world as part of a curse. And I realized that the Blackwells weren't the only family trapped in this house. There are other souls who are caught in the vortex of evil, unable to escape. When Elizabeth's spirit disappeared, I felt my body lighten, as if a burden had been lifted from my mind. But just when I thought I could escape this obsession, I realized something inexplicable: I couldn't get out. Every door, every escape route is closed. I turned around and looked in the mirror, and this time, I didn't see myself anymore. I saw another man, standing behind me in the reflection. That's not me. It was the man who stood in the darkness of my dreams, the man I couldn't recognize. I started to feel changes in my body. Not only was I obsessed with this house, I was starting to become a part of it. At some point, I realized that I wasn't living in this house was living in me. Every event, every spirit, every darkness, all had entered my body and mind. And I understand that I can't get out anymore. This obsession is not a challenge to deal with. It is a never-ending series of events. The spirits of the past, the shadows from this house, will always continue to exist within me. And when I looked in the mirror again, I was no longer myself. I am part of this house, part of this curse. My story has no end. I was trapped in a world I couldn't explain. Every night, the voices, the shadows, and the feeling of being watched never left me. This house has become a part of me, and I cannot escape it. I can't stop thinking about what happened in that secret room. All the spirits and shadows, the mirror images, seemed to draw me on an inescapable hunt. A strange thing happened. I began to feel these spirits as if they were communicating with me. Not through words, but through feelings, colds, strange emotions that I cannot explain. This feeling was so strong that I couldn't sleep. Every night, I feel an invisible presence standing next to me, quietly watching my every move. I couldn't see them, but I knew they were there, right next to me. Like I'm not alone anymore. This feeling becomes more and more clear. One night, when I woke up in the middle of the night, I felt a cold hand touch my neck. I jumped up immediately, but when I looked around, there was no one. But I know, that hand is not imaginary. It really exists. Every day, I feel the presence of these souls more strongly. I started hearing strange sounds that I couldn't explain, noises coming from the walls, from the ground, as if someone was trying to get out. I couldn't pinpoint their exact location, but I knew they were everywhere in the house. One day, I decided to go back to the old paintings I found in the house. In one painting, I noticed a strange detail, a man standing in the background, with cold eyes, almost identical to the person I had seen in the mirror. I realized that it was Henry Blackwell, the previous owner of the house. That picture is not just an ordinary family photo. I began to learn about him, and what I discovered gave me chills. Henry Blackwell performed an ancient ritual in this house. This ritual is said to keep the souls of his family and others from escaping, but instead, keeps them in an invisible space. This house is no ordinary place. It is a place built on secrets and curses, where time cannot erase the existence of imprisoned souls. When I learned this information, I realized that I was not the only one who was haunted. Everyone who has ever lived in this house has been caught in an inescapable spiral, a mental trap that they cannot escape. Those spirits were not the invisible ghosts I thought they were. They can feel it, they can influence me, and they can make me a part of this obsession. Every step I took in the house, I not only heard the footsteps but also felt their movement, as if those souls were watching me, waiting for me to enter another world. One night, when I woke up again in the middle of the night, I realized something strange. I couldn't see my reflection in the mirror. I turned around, tried looking in another mirror, but the result was the same. There's no shadow of me in there. I felt like I had lost myself, caught up in a space I couldn't escape. This feeling of being haunted grew stronger, and I began to realize that this house was slowly swallowing me whole. I tried everything to escape it, but the more I tried to escape, the more trapped I felt. I decided to go back to the place where I met Henry Blackwell in my dream. I need to find out the truth, I need to decode this curse. When I opened the last door, I saw a dark room that I had never seen before. In front of me is an old desk with a book open. On the page were strange words, like ancient prayers, but not in a language I knew. As I got closer, a cold wind blew, sending the pages of the book flying, and I saw an image appear in my mind, the image of a ghostly ritual. Those who participated in that ritual never escaped. They are trapped in a space between the living world and the dead world. And I understand that I have become a part of that ritual. When I looked at the picture of the Blackwell family, I realized that I was not just dealing with a spirit. I was facing myself, with another self I had never known. Those spirits were wanting me to participate in their ritual, for me to become a part of them, so that I could stay in this house forever. At this point, I am no longer a living person. I have been caught up in a vortex of souls, and this house will always be the place I call home. I realized that I couldn't escape, that I had become part of the evil that had haunted this house for generations. One last night, when I looked in the mirror again, I no longer saw myself. I saw another person, a dark figure standing behind me, looking at me with empty eyes. I couldn't move, I couldn't say anything. And in that moment, I understood that I had become a part of that house, a part of that soul. And I know that this house will forever be where I'm stuck. My story has no end, because I will forever live in that darkness, never freed. Every night, I'm left with only the voices whispering in the mirror, the shadows chasing me, waiting for me to do their part. After realizing I couldn't escape this house, I began to learn more about its history. As the days passed while feeling watched, I decided to find out the truth about Henry Blackwell and the spirits that haunted this house. There was no other way. I had to dig deep into my past to understand why I was trapped in this nightmare. I went to an old library near the neighborhood, where there were old documents about the house. That library, although it looked old and dim, contained a treasure trove of information that no one could easily access. Searching through old books, I found a diary of someone who had previously lived in this house. He wrote about strange phenomena experienced by the Blackwell family, about occult rituals and whispers from the darkness. The diary entry says that the house is not a simple place. It was built on sacred ground, where souls were imprisoned for a long time. And the most important part of that story is the ritual that Henry Blackwell performed. Accordingly, he not only tried to keep the souls of his family, but also sought to link other souls to this house, forming a chain of eternal hauntings. These souls are not allowed to escape, but must return to the house and live there forever. I couldn't believe what I read. One man, through greed or fear, turned this house into a place from which no one could escape. And now, I am a part of that story. With new insights from the diary, I returned to the house once again, this time carrying the tools I had prepared to break the curse. I feel like I have become a part of this house, but I still don't give up hope that I can escape. I entered the basement again, feeling like I was entering another world. The basement was dark, and the light from my flashlight only made the darkness thicker. But this time, I didn't feel completely alone. I feel the spirits here, as if they are looking at me from dark corners. Faint figures flashed before my eyes, then disappeared instantly. Every step I took echoed in the quiet space, and I felt like they were watching my every move. Suddenly, I heard a heavy breathing sound, as if someone was standing behind me. My heart beat strongly. I turned around, but there was no one. However, the light from my flashlight shined on a wall I had never noticed before. A stone wall. It looked very old, but there was a strange mark on it, a magic symbol I had seen in the book. I took the hammer from my backpack and started pounding on the wall. After a few strong blows, the wall broke, revealing a small room behind. This room is unlike any other room in the house. There were no windows, no light, and everything felt cold and dry. On the floor is an ancient chest, covered in dust. I don't know if I should open it or not, but part of me feels like I have to. When I opened the trunk, a cold breeze blew past. Inside the trunk is an old photo of the Blackwell family, but this time there's a big difference. In the photo, their family stands with another person, a man who is not present. I realized it was the figure in my dreams. It's Henry Blackwell. I saw something I couldn't explain, a handwritten letter, rolled up and tied tightly with rope. I opened the letter and read. If you find this letter, you have gone too far. Henry not only holds the souls of my family, but he also seeks to turn this house into an eternal nightmare, from which no one can escape. Every soul in this house has been imprisoned, with no way to escape. And now, you too will become a part of this curse. I felt a wave of fear wash over me. I was too late. I was no longer me. I have become a part of this house, a part of the soul that I cannot separate from. At this moment, I understood that I was caught up in a nightmare that I could not escape from. Not only was I haunted by the spirits in the house, but I had also become a part of them. The whispers in the mirror, the shadows in the fading light, they were all pulling me into another world, a world I couldn't fully understand. I went down to the basement again, and this time I wasn't scared anymore. Because I know that I can't get out. The spirits of the Blackwell family have been waiting for me, and now, I am part of them. Every night, I still wake up to the sounds of breathing and whispering voices in the darkness. Even though I knew I couldn't escape this house, I couldn't stop feeling scared. But the strange thing is, in my dreams, I began to feel like I was part of this house, and those spirits were not my enemies. They are friends who will never abandon me. This house, where I was imprisoned, has now become my home. And I know that I will forever stay here, next to the souls that have been left behind. I cannot leave the house. Even though I was no longer myself, I knew that I had been swept into another world, a place where souls could not escape, and where time seemed to no longer exist. The shadows, the voices, and the dim lights became a part of me. I no longer feel the difference between reality and fantasy, between life and death. Every night, I walk into the room where I first met Henry Blackwell, and those spirits are still there. They don't look at me with hatred or pain anymore. They just looked at me, as if they were waiting for me to join them, as if I were part of this story. And I know I can't get out. I began to understand that this house held more than just the souls of the Blackwell family. It holds the souls of everyone who has ever entered here. The shadows are not monsters, but people who have lost the ability to transcend. They are souls trapped in an unbreakable vortex. One night, as I sat in the living room, the light from the lamp falling, I felt an absolute silence, as if everything had stopped. I don't feel scared anymore. It seemed that the spirit of Henry Blackwell had adopted me as a part of this house. Part of the curse has been completed. I stood up and walked through the hallway, where I had previously fled. Now, the walls no longer threaten me. Each step echoed in the quiet space, as if I were a part of this house. I no longer worry about getting out. I no longer feel trapped. But when I got to the bathroom mirror, I saw something very strange. I looked at my reflection, and for the first time, I didn't recognize the person in the mirror. It's me, but it's not me. It was another soul, a part of those who had passed away. It was me, but I was no longer alive. The wall before my eyes began to crack, and I felt like I had entered another world. I'm not the only one in this house anymore. All the souls that once lived here, all the trapped souls, have now welcomed me. I can't get out. I don't need to find a way out anymore. This house has become where I belong. These souls are no longer my nightmares. They were my family, with whom I shared an unbreakable curse. And when I turned to look at the house from afar, I saw that it had become a part of me. There was no more light shining in, no more sound or life outside. All that's left is darkness, and I, a part of it. Every night, I still hear whispers. Those souls, like me, no longer want to escape. We are already part of this house, and we will forever live in darkness. My story ends, but the house's curse never ends. Everyone who comes here will become a part of it, and will never escape. This house is not a place to live. It is a place for souls who cannot escape, souls forever trapped in darkness. And I became a part of those souls, a part of evil that cannot be explained. Part of the curse. Today's story ends here. Do you believe it's just fiction, or is there something real that exists around us? Please share your thoughts below. Don't forget to like, subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss the next stories. Have a good night's sleep, if that's possible.